Okay, welcome. Welcome to call by reference. Welcome to call by reference. What is this call by reference? Call by reference. So if you remember, we discussed functions. And within functions, we have discussed parameter pausing techniques. I mentioned 5 parameter pausing techniques, and I also mentioned that C supports 2 types of parameter pausing techniques. One is call by value, that the other one is call by reference. Call by value, call by reference. They are the 2 parameter pausing techniques supported by the C language. We discussed about the call by value parameter pausing technique in functions itself. In that module itself, we discussed about that parameter pausing techniques. We discussed examples also. So basically, whenever you pass values to a function, arguments to a function, then in the case of call by value, the arguments memory locations and parameters memory locations are different. Arguments memory locations and parameter memory locations are different. Whereas in the case of call by reference, the arguments and parameters both refer to the same location. Okay. Now, what is the difference? If you remember the diagrammatic representation of it, so if you invoke function like this, say function a comma b, this is function invocation, and assume that this is the function call. The function ab is the function call, and the function is defined like this. A minute. This is the function call. Say a, let us use only one parameter, function a, and suppose this is the function definition, say x. Okay, say let us assume that it is integer if you want, integer x. So within this you have some code, you write some code. Okay, you write some code. So some code you have written. Now if you consider a and x, so in case of normal variables, a and x will be referred to the different locations. That means, say if you have a, so a will be referring to some location. Okay. Now the value of a is positive x. So if it is call by value parameter pausing techniques, which is applicable for all ordinary variables, integers, floats, double char, etc. For all those variables, by default, call by value parameter pausing technique is applied. So a will be pointing to some location. In that case, if you consider again x, which is a parameter, this is the argument, a is the argument, x is a parameter. So if you consider x, so x value or x variable will also be pointing to some other location, not the same location. It will be pointing to some other location. But the only thing that happens is the value of a will be copied into value of x. That means, say again, if 10 is the value here, so when you invoke this function, the value 10 will be copied here. That means a and x will be using the same value. A and X will be using the same value, but Ath location and Xth location are different. A and X will be referring to different locations. So because they refer to the different locations, within this function, if we manipulate the value of X, the value here is modified, but the value of this argument remains the same. That is call by value parameter parsing technique. Now let us convert it, change it like this. Let us change it like this. Okay, A is referring to some location. Now, if it in the case of call by reference, which is achieved using pointers, and also arrays are powered by call by reference. For pointers and for arrays, call by reference parameter parsing technique is used. The reasons also we discuss it then. Just refer back to it. So in that case, so say X. So X will also be referring to this location. That means A and X both use the same location. Now what happens? If we manipulate the value of X, the value at this location is modified. That means because A is also pointing to the same location, A value also gets modified. Say within this calling function, say you can write like this. Want more clarity? Let us assume it is main function, and main started, and let us say main ends here. So within this, if it is called by reference parameter parsing technique, so you have invoked a function say func. So you gone there, you executed it. If X value is modified there, then A value will also be modified. So if I try to access the value of A here at this point, then modified value will be getting. That is call by reference parameter parsing technique. So both A and X, both the argument and parameter will be referring to the same location. If you modify the values of parameters, then the reflected or modified values will be assigned to the arguments also. Of course, after the function invocation. At this point, they get the modified values, not before this function invocation. After function invocation, until the end of that function, that arguments will get the modified values. Okay, that is call by reference. So call by reference, in the case of call by reference, both will be referring to the same location. Why? How? So because you will pass not the value, you will be passing the address. So the argument address is passed to the pointer. Argument address is copied to the pointer variable. So both these will be referring to the same location. So call by reference is achieved using pointers, and also by default arrays are passed by call by reference. That point also you remember. So argument values can be modified whenever the argument values get modified, whenever the parameter values get modified. So this is an example of using pointers. Okay. So this is the function name. So addresses of arguments. Whenever you want to invoke the function, you have to specify the function name, followed by you have to specify the addresses of arguments separated by commas. Addresses of arguments separated by commas. Say if A is the argument, what you have to write? You should not write just A. You have to write ampersand A. So in the function, so you have to specify them as pointers. That means star is to be used. Here you can see the example, standard example. This we will study as part of programming, but the glimpse of it or the skeleton of it is like this. So swap is one function, name of the function. So here you are invoking that. So you want to pass x and y, you want to pass by call by reference. So you have to precede those argument names by ampersand. Precede the argument names by ampersand. And within the function body, function definition, what you have to do? You have to declare them as pointers. You have to specify them as pointers. The parameters here are not int a comma int b, but int star a comma int star b. This you have to do. So if we do like this, the arguments are passed by call by reference. Passing arrays to functions also. As I mentioned, arrays are also passed by default using the parameter passing technique call by reference. But how it is done? Say if array is the array name, okay, then while invoking the function, you have to just specify the array name. And within the function definition, while you are defining the function, you have to specify the square brackets, empty square brackets. You have to mention the empty square brackets indicating that it is an array. Suppose if, for example, if A is an array, say A of some 20, okay, and if you want to pass A, then say func is the function name, you have to just specify the name of the array like this. This is function calling or function invocation. Okay, you have to call like this. Within the function definition, what you have to write? FUNC, same function. Say if it is integer, name of the array, that is A, and you have to specify the square brackets. Okay. You have to specify the square brackets. So this is how you have to do it. But remember, arrays are passed by call by reference. That means if you modify the values of array, the modified values will get reflected within the invoking function also, after function invocation. So that is arrays. This also will study as part of the programming example, but this is the theory behind it. We have discussed functions, we have discussed arrays. Now we are trying to combine them. So all these combinations, I made it as a separate chapter. Because there is a lot of interdependency. So it's better we discuss them separately and then combine them. These are small topics, but several small topics are brought together in a module. So this is passing arrays to functions. So we belong to the same address. So string together, be united. Thank you very much for joining.